great to see so many daughters of Rotarians and Rotarians with us today. We're now very pleased to also recognize Rotarian Bob Hope, who's been such a key player in our club, and his daughter Claire Wallace. And they will tell you a little bit about our very distinguished keynote speaker today. We'll also be able to show a short video. So let me turn it over to Bob and Claire. Let's give them a hand, please.
It's hard to believe it was almost 30 years ago when the Olympics were in Atlanta. And for all that we've enjoyed the Olympics and all the visibility it gave us worldwide, probably the most important thing about Atlanta's Olympics is they were the women's Olympics. You know, within the sports world and the Olympic world, they call them the Women's Olympics or the Title IX Olympics, because they were the first Olympics when Title IX, which was legislation in 1972, had fully kicked in. And if you're not familiar with Title IX, I know most people are, Title IX is very simple. It just says that girls and boys should be given equal opportunities in education. And sports is part of education. And sadly, it became very controversial because of sports. When Title IX started, 1 in 27 girls in high school participated in sports. By 1996, it was 1 in 3. 1996, and we should thank Billy Payne for this, had 1,000 more women participating in the Olympics than any Olympics in history. And by the way, that's still the most women who had ever participated in the Olympics to this day. And at the end of it, by the nature of the Olympics, you know, there are people you don't know participating when they go into the Olympics, but they're heroes afterwards. And Dominique corrected me, there were sheroes. There were more, you know, the stars who came out of the 1996 Olympics were women. Some of the most notable ones were the soccer team. Women's soccer had never been in the Olympics before. In fact, when they sold tickets, they teamed it up with men's soccer because they didn't think anybody would go see women play soccer. And yet in the gold medal rounds, they were individual tickets. And the largest crowd ever for soccer, 85,000 people showed up to see the women's final. Very similar things happened in softball, but the group that came out of it, most recognized and most honored, were the Magnificent Seven. I'm going to turn this over to my daughter Claire, and she's going to introduce our speaker today, who will be interviewed by our own superstar, Julia Houston. But also I want to note with Claire, when we talk about Title IX and the opportunities it provided, is Claire, you know, Claire looks like an ordinary person. She is the world record holder for the marathon in crew, so she's a beneficiary.
Thanks, Dad. Okay, I remember the summer very well. It was a great time to be in Atlanta. I worked at the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau that summer. And as I was welcoming people to Atlanta, there was another 20-year-old across town breaking records and making history. She was in her second of 3 Olympic Games as a member of the Magnificent Seven, the gold medal winning U.S. Olympic team. In the same game, she also won an individual bronze medal, making her the first African American to win an individual medal in Olympic gymnastics. And if you followed gymnastics at all in the past probably 20 years, you know that she has undoubtedly paved the way for many young elite gymnasts. Since retiring from competitive gymnastics, she's used her platform to educate and empower families, women, and young girls on issues related to physical and mental health. She's been a national spokesperson and ambassador for multiple nonprofits and corporations, including Girl Scouts of America, Boys and Girls Clubs of America. She's been president of the Women's Sports Foundation. She has served as co-chair of the President's Council for Fitness, Sports, and Nutrition under the Obama administration. And currently, she's the owner and CEO of the Dominique Dawes Gymnastics and Ninja Academies, which she started to continue her commitment to a healthy and compassionate culture in gymnastics, all the while performing probably one of her most challenging roles as mother of 4 young children. Please, we have a video that you can watch, I think.
lot of Dominique's questions will be answered very, very shortly. She has an extremely difficult acrobatic series right off the top of her routine. This is it.
Needs a 9.801 or better, and she'll take the lead away from Shannon Miller. American Shannon Miller now in the lead after 2. Start when she was about 6 and a half. She signed up for a tumbling class, and when she showed up, the thing was canceled. And then she was at a fast food restaurant and bumped into some kids from Kelly Hills Gymnastics. She's been with her ever since.
All right,
I can just girl talk.
please welcome to the stage two Wonder Women.
You guys okay out here?
What? Julia and Dominique.
Did you bring your gold medal up here?
I did.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that.
Yes.
So-
And I can pass it around.
I know. It's
Yeah.
pretty. I had never seen a gold medal before, so if you have not seen one, you need to take the
Yes.
opportunity.
So what I will do is I will pass it around because I know not everyone's going to stay after.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a brief meet and greet. So you young lady. And the good thing is there's an Apple AirTag on it. So if you try to walk out with that, yeah, I will find you. Yeah.
Okay.
I lost it before, so I've learned.
So if you were listening closely, you could hear the announcer talking about your story, which was that you started gymnastics when you were 6.5 years old, and then you moved out of your house part-time when you were 8 or 9, right, to live with your coach while you were training? So, I mean, we've got a lot of young women in this room who I'm sure can't imagine doing that right now, but I would love to just hear, what was that like for you?
Well, it's interesting. My journey was a unique journey, but in the sport of gymnastics, that does happen. I'm now a mother of 4 beautiful, amazing kids that make me cry every day. And this morning when I got up at 3:30 for my driver to arrive at 4:20, my husband was like, "Oh, have a good day, you know, like it's gonna be tough." And I'm like, no, what you have in 3 hours is gonna be tough. Good luck, right? Our 4 little kids, we have a 9-year-old, an 8-year-old, and soon to be 6-year-old twins. And they are just the joy of my life. But my journey was unique. I did move away with my coach. When I speak these days, I speak to parents. Don't ever allow that to happen. Don't ever allow that to happen. It's just not advised. But I moved away when I was very young. I was so committed to the sport of gymnastics. I loved it. I was very passionate about it. My dad was a garbage man. He owned a trash company. My grandfather owned a trash company. My uncles owned trash companies. I don't know why they never passed it down to us women. They didn't think we wanted to run trash companies. I would have loved to have run trash companies, believe it or not. That was my life as a child. But my parents couldn't afford gymnastics. And so they allowed me to train, to live with my coach, and I ended up pretty much working a full-time job at a very young age and was able to accomplish 3 Olympic Games from that sacrifice.
So I was talking to one of my friends about having the chance to interview you, and we were saying, every kid when they're up till they're 10, they think they're going to play in the NBA or go be on the elite sports team in some way, but you actually did. So what was the thing? When did you really know that you were that good?
I didn't. I think even when I made my first Olympic Games in 1992, I was 15 years old. And the funny thing is, my young daughters, two of my daughters, they competed in their first gymnastics meet about 2 weekends ago in Baltimore, Maryland, and it was 31 and a half years from when I qualified to my first Olympic Games from Baltimore, that Baltimore arena. And, you know, I never thought I was that good. Even after qualifying to the Olympics and competing in the Olympics and representing my country, I just never had a great amount of confidence in myself. And I'm that kind of person where I will have the faith and believe that it's possible, but until it really happens, you know, I didn't always think that I belonged there. And that was how I was throughout my whole career. But a lot of that had to do with the culture that I was in, and I'll speak a little bit about that later on. But the culture in the sport of gymnastics was pretty harsh back then. I'm happy to hear that things have changed, and a number of, you know, current gymnasts have come up to me, and I'm so happy to hear that they're enjoying their journey, and they're smiling, and they're having fun, and they're not losing their childhood. And that's unfortunately, I think, what I had to go through at that time. But things happen like that for a reason, and I grew and I learned from it.
So let's talk about the Olympics, the second Olympics, because I think you probably have lots of people in this room, including me, who were there and who watched you compete. And what was that like?
It was amazing. How many of you guys were at those Olympic Games? Yeah, this is the most hands ever. I've been doing public speaking now for 27 and a half years, and I've told my husband each and every time I go to an event and I ask someone if they were at the Summer Olympic Games, I'm not lying. He thinks I'm lying. There was always one person in the audience, and I always ask, did you bring the ticket? Like, did you bring the ticket? And they never bring the ticket. I'm like, goodness, you should have brought in the ticket. But, you know, it's great. I mean, you guys can probably remember those Olympic Games like it was yesterday. I mean, I feel like it doesn't feel like it was 27 and a half years ago, and Atlanta has always felt like a second home to me. Whenever I get back here, I have fond memories of, you know, the high moments in my life where I became the first African-American gymnast to win a gold medal, to be a part of a history-making women's gymnastics team, the Magnificent Seven. I don't know why our agents named us the Magnificent Seven, because everyone a part of that generation were thinking of a country western, right? And we were like, what is that? You know, we have no clue. But I just have fond memories with those girls they made me better, the Magnificent Seven.
Do you still stay in touch?
Not a chance, and not a chance. They were, you know, I'm the one that's like brutally honest, and they're like, Dom, soften it up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't lie, I'm 47. No, we don't, because we were competitors our whole lives. Like, you know, from ages, when I first started competing at 9, 10 years old, I had at one point a picture of Shannon Miller in my locker. And I was like, you know, whenever I wanted to quit, whenever I wanted to walk away from the sport, I would look at that locker and I'd be like, that young little scrawny girl, she is not quitting. So I've got to step it up and I've got to give it a little bit more. And so I always say that it was those Olympic Games in '96, those 6 gymnasts were the most talented athletes that I had ever competed with or against my whole career. And they not only made me a better athlete, but they also made me a better person. And for years after those Olympic Games, we went on tour. Like, we became like rock stars, which was not so cool because I'm a very private, very introverted person. And so it was a little overwhelming, but we bonded and got to know each other as friends because we were competitors our whole lives. And it was just a beautiful experience to have. And whenever we do see each other, the last time it was an awesome Olympic reunion, it was cool because we talked about our husbands and we talked about our children, and we did not talk about the Olympic Games. We did not talk about the sport of gymnastics. We connected and we bonded with regards to the most important parts of our lives.
So that's interesting. You were competitors, and then you came together on that gold medal winning team as teammates. How did you handle the pressure?
I did not handle it well. My goodness. Well, Bob, I appreciate you showing my balance beam routine because I rocked it on that balance beam routine, and of course I'm a gymnast, so I'm seeing all the imperfections, so I'm reframing the way I think now. But the next routine, it was a fall. Weren't you like, ooh, we can't show that one, right? Like, yeah. It's interesting because when I give speeches today, many times I will show my Olympic fall because I am, not that anyone's grateful of having painful moments in life and setbacks, but I'm grateful for it because I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be with the loving husband I have today. I wouldn't have the amazing 4 kids that I have today. And that painful moment in the sport of gymnastics really shaped me, more so than winning the Olympic gold, more so than making history and being on top of the podium. And so when I look back at my career, I always embrace those painful moments. I always embrace those bumps in the road because that's really what shaped me. And I got that 9.807 or whatever it said I needed to get to beat Shannon after that beam routine, and I was going into my best event. I was always known to be a great tumbler. I was a great performer. It looked like I could dance, and I always say, don't let the color fool you. I had phenomenal choreographers that made me look good. They made me look very good, and I fell. And for those of you all that were at those Olympic Games, do you remember me falling? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it, yes. So many people will raise their hand and they'll start crying, and I'm like, you're gonna make me cry. But I fell on the floor exercise, and I had the opportunity to win the all-around. And how crazy amazing would that have been in Atlanta, Georgia, on American soil to be an all-around champion? And I know for the longest time at the end of my career, my athletic career, it was coulda, woulda, shoulda. I thought I disappointed so many people. I disappointed my coach because I lived with her and she always would tell me everything that she sacrificed for me. Or I disappointed my parents. And at those Olympic Games, when I fell, my parents were going through a very vicious, brutal divorce. And I remember looking in the audience. It was the Georgia Dome. We had half the Georgia Dome. Basketball was on the other half. And we were on the other half, and it was just under 50,000 people. And I remember looking in different directions and just thinking, oh my gosh, I failed it for so many people. But the thing is, once I continued to process things and work through that painful moment, that loss, that setback, I realized it's made me so much stronger. But thank you, Bob, for not showing that fall. I do appreciate that.
So Bob was talking about how people came into that as unknown people, and then you walk out as a star. And so so I have to bring up, I told you I was going to bring this up. So one of the coolest things that I read about you having the opportunity to do was be in a Prince video. Tell us about that.
Oh, that was super fun. It was at the time, he was the artist formerly known as, so he was a symbol. I was a professional athlete at that time. After my first Olympic Games in '92, I signed a full scholarship to Stanford University. And I talk to my husband all the time. I'm like, oh, if only I went to Stanford. He's like, hello, you wouldn't have met me, the kids, hello. No, but I signed a full scholarship to Stanford, and a little birdie got in my ear and said, hey, there's an Olympics on American soil, Atlanta, Georgia. You're peaking. I had won national championships that year in '94. I won the all-around. I won vault bars, beam, and floor. That had not been done since 1969, I think it was. And so I was peaking. And so when that little birdie got in my ear and said, hey, you should be a professional athlete in the sport of gymnastics, I was like, what does that mean? And so I decided to sign away my eligibility to Stanford, and I became a professional athlete. And 2 years later, I qualified to my second Olympic Games. And I'm not going to say I became a rock star. That is so not my personality whatsoever. But there were many opportunities that I was presented with. And being a part of the Magnificent Seven and having, I guess, the talent and the work ethic that I had, I was given some great opportunities. I was on Broadway for a while. Absolutely no talent. I cannot sing, act, or dance. I faked it really well. My husband lets me know they must have shut off the mic because I cannot sing. And I got an opportunity to be in a music video that Prince was leading, and my agent called me and said, hey, the artist formerly known as wants you to be in a video, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And all of a sudden, I got a call, and I was in Florida at the time, and Prince had a very deep voice, and this individual had a very deep voice and said he was the artist formerly known as. And I'd like to talk to Dominique Dawes. And, I'm like, whatever. I was like, who is this? Whatever. Click. And I hung up. My agent called the hotel, because this is pre cell phones and stuff. He called the hotel and was like, oh my gosh, you just hung up on Prince. I quit. I quit. I'm going to quit. But soon thereafter, in November, I was flown to Paisley Park, and I was in a music video with one of my childhood, not heroes, but I used to love Madonna. I'm really telling my age. I was born in '76. Madonna, Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson, Prince. And so this was a dream. And I got there, and then it was a nightmare because he said to me, he was like, well, I want you to freestyle. And I was like, I'm a gymnast. We don't freestyle. You tell us what to do, and we do it. We're robots. We don't have the creativity to do it. And so he then got a choreographer, and I think made me look pretty good. But it was a wonderful moment. A few years ago, goodness, I was pregnant with my second child, Quinn, so it was at least 8+ years ago. My husband and I were invited to the White House and I was doing work, as Claire had mentioned, a part of the president's initiative, and Prince was the performer there.
Oh.
And so it was pretty spectacular to see him perform again in person so many years after having worked closely with him.
So after your fame and time on Broadway, you've now opened 2 gymnastics academies, but you had said that you would never be a gym owner or be in the gymnastics field. So what changed for you?
Well, in the early 2000s, my grandfather, who's always been an entrepreneur, he told me, he was like, open a gymnastics gym. You would be really good at that. And I remember looking around and seeing the likes of my coach or other gym owners and head coaches, and they were, while they did very well successfully, they were miserable individuals. And I didn't want to become like those individuals. And I thought, you know what, I haven't seen anyone do it well. That's not for me, Granddaddy. I'm gonna go off. I did speaking engagements. I had a number of endorsements, kind of dabbled at one point with commercial real estate. That was super fun. And then all of a sudden, got married, had 2 kids, and you guys might remember the news from the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio. After Simone Biles won the Olympics and racked up a number of other gold medals, and the team won, there was the breaking news of Larry Nassar. I'm not going to be graphic because there's children in the audience, but as a mother of 2 kids, it struck me. That was someone, that Olympic team doctor, Larry Nassar, is someone that I knew for 10 years of my childhood. And I viewed him as a friend. And I viewed him as a friend because he was that individual that he would claim he was a safe space because he saw what many gymnasts were going through. He saw us yelled at, he saw the physical abuse, he saw the emotional abuse, and he saw how vulnerable each of us were. He was at my 1996 Olympic Games and also my 2000 Olympic Games, and I'm sad to say that a number of my teammates stepped into his web. I did not. I was very guarded and always had a very thick wall up. When that came out, I had 2 kids. My husband was a school teacher and a beloved, beloved school teacher. And he made it very clear, he said, you have to be a part of the change. And he knew I wasn't going to work at the Federation. And he said the way that you can change the culture of the sport of gymnastics is you can start opening up academies and doing things that doing things the way you know it needs to be done. And the interesting thing is when I started dating my husband, who was a school teacher for 18 years, all boys Catholic school. Many times he would come back to the house and he would share with me so many young men that would come back and want to grab a beer of age with Mr. Thompson. Or they would invite Mr. Thompson to their wedding. Or they would want to have Mr. Thompson over the family's house for dinner. So many young boys would come back and their families would come back. And I would ask him, what is it that you guys do here? I lived in a gymnastics gym for 18 years and I don't want to go back. It was full of fear. It was full of control. It was full of coercion, intimidation. There was a great deal of pressure, too much for a young person. And he said, it's very clear that we love these young boys because of the people that they are. And they come back to say thank you. And so when he and I brainstormed of how to do gymnastics differently, it was treating each and every kid like a human being and caring about each and every kid that walks through our doors. And as he learned, thank you. And as he was taught by his headmaster, the most important kid is the one standing right in front of you. And so throughout his 18 years, he had an opportunity to inspire and touch and motivate and empower every single one of those young boys that he had the blessing to teach. And he taught 7th and 8th grade boys. And he loved it. My son is 6, and I'm like, I couldn't imagine what he's going to be like in 7th and 8th grade. I think I'm going to run away from my daughters for sure. But my son, oh my goodness, he embraced it. And even to this day, he stepped away from teaching because of COVID. I had already signed a lease to a 20,000 square foot facility for 10 years. And then when COVID hit, he had to come home and teach virtually, and this man can't send an email to save his life. And he was like, oh my goodness. And I was like, well, I need you to walk away from teaching. I made this commitment, or I'm going to owe $4 million that I don't have right now. Seriously. And so he stepped away from teaching, and he has been, someone asked me if my husband runs the business. No, but he is the personality behind the business. I'm not the personality. I'm not a...
That's hard to believe.
Yeah. Gymnasts are stiff. We don't have personalities. My
I
goodness,
don't know
we're
about
workers.
that.
We're workers. I love connecting with people, though. Yeah, he's just been teaching me how to do things the right way, because unfortunately where I came from in the sport, it was very harsh. It was very critical. It was all about looking at imperfections. It was all about striving for that perfect 10. How many remember Nadia Comaneci? I was born in 1976, right? The sport of gymnastics ingrained in these young girls that you have to strive for perfection. And you guys look mature enough, we're not going to be perfection, ever, ever, ever. And what it taught us is that we were never enough. And what it taught us is we always needed to fix or improve things. And so the thing is, when I walk into my facilities now, we have 2, about to sign a lease on a 3rd. Please pray for us. I love it. I love it. I love the impact. When I walk into my facility, my 3-time Olympic self sees everything that's wrong. Sees everything that's wrong. What was ingrained in me in the sport of gymnastics. I see that that's not tidy enough, or that staff member is taking a break, or that child's not sweating enough, or whatever it is, right? Like looking at all the imperfections. When I watched that beam routine was wicked, right? Like someone over here was clapping, and I was like, dude, thank you. Seriously, it was you. I was like, this is so awesome. That's not me anymore. And then I have to step back. My husband reminds me, step out and step back in and remember why we did this, why you made this financial commitment, why you have stepped out of your comfort zone. I am very private. I am very introverted. It is just my nature. I've always been this way. But when you own a facility with thousands of kids coming through on a weekly basis, you're going to be in your an uncomfortable situation for a bit. But he reminds me why we did this. And then I walk back in, and I see young kids smiling. I see young kids fostering friendships. I see staff members not being yelled at and put down, because honestly, the abuse is not to the athletes only, but it's also to the coaches. People enjoying being in our gym space. And I see kids leaving out sweating and smiling, and I'm like, okay, while there's things we always have to fix and work on, I need to embrace what is going well and remember why I started this. And there will be no Larry Nassar situations in my facility if I can prevent it.
Well, and I love that. You say that you always anchor on your why. Yeah. So we're about to have some questions from the audience, but I want to ask you first. So we've got lots of daughters and young women in the room, in the audience. So what would be your best piece of advice for them?
Oh my goodness. See, my advice isn't for the little ones. It's to the parents.
Well, to the parents
It's
then.
to the
Let's go to the
parents.
parents.
Like, what are we doing? My advice, it's funny because I've been speaking now for 27 and a half years, and people would ask me what advice you would give to parents, and I was like 19, and I was like, I don't know. When I think back of the sport of gymnastics and what I went through, there were so many parents that sat there and they watched their kid go through what we went through. And she was crying the whole practice. Didn't want to come back. Surgery after surgery after surgery. Parents, open your eyes. My parents weren't there. They weren't there. But there are so many parents that witness this and they think this is how we build a champion. That is how you break a human being. And what motivates me to do the work that I'm doing today, I have so many amazing teammates, and I'm not talking about Olympic teammates, but amazing teammates for Maryland that are broken, that are damaged, that are wounded from what they went through. And they talk about the abuses and they talk about the high-level athletes, but there are those that were amazing gymnasts and just put down day after day after day after day, and they're struggling with mental health issues today because of that toxic culture. And so my advice would be to parents, open your eyes. Is adding that pressure worth it on our kids? Like I'm, 3-time Olympian, I'm doing okay with my businesses and things, but when I look at Kateri, Quinn, Lincoln, and Dakota, all I want for them is to grow up to be happy and healthy. I don't give a crap if they're standing on top of a podium or making millions of dollars or a person of power and prestige. If they're miserable, if they're incomplete, if they're broken. And so I think for us parents, we need to remind our children what success is, what happiness is. I know when I made my first million, I became the most anxious-filled, fearful individual because I was so afraid of losing it. I wanted another degree, or I wanted to impress this person, or I need to work with this person or that person or that person. And you know what? My most memorable moments in life are sitting out back in our modest home, my husband and I's modest home, watching our 4 children enjoy their childhood. They have one childhood. One. There's no do-overs. One childhood, playing on a playset and laughing, carefree, and watching the sunset. And we love doing s'mores, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's too much sugar. And my husband's like, one childhood. I'm like 14 cavities. But enjoying these little moments. My kids, they go to our gyms, yes. They train, and I think gymnastics is the greatest sport to build a strong foundation. It really is. Like, you don't have to have a highly competitive gymnast. They don't need to be training 20 plus hours a week. Let them have fun. But it's a great sport for fundamentals. So all 4 of our kids do gymnastics. My son is like, absolutely not, there's too many girls. I'm like, okay, we have ninja. So he does ninja. But when they don't want to go to practice, you know what I don't do? I don't force them. I didn't have a choice when I was little. I woke up every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and trained 6 to 8 in the morning, public school till 2:20, back to the gym 3 to 8 p.m. at night, and then 5 hours on the weekend. And because I lived with my coach and my parents didn't want to come pick me up because it was so far, she had me there pimping me out on Sundays for birthday parties for her business. So I lived at the gym. I realize this now. I didn't realize that then. When my kids don't want to go to practice because they want to be a kid, you know what my husband and I don't do? We don't force them. Okay, you're not taking a full week off unless we're going on vacation. But you know what? If you want to just stay home and play and swing on a swing set, we're going to allow them to do that. And he reminds me, you never had this. And the reason why, he says, is the reason why you can't turn off your work at times is because you never had this. And so the funny thing is, we are so opposite, and it drives me nuts. But it's so great for me. And I'm so great for him, right? Would you agree?
Dominique, let's give her a hand. Now, we can answer a couple questions. Well, let's go ahead and give Dominique a big hand. We have a few minutes for some questions. We have a mic over here, and even the little ones, we can pull the mic off for you.
I think Virginia's, she's committed. 18 years, right? Yes. Yeah.
So,
There's a mic right behind you there.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
I like this. First of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being honest, for being blunt, for saying how it is, and for making a difference. I grew up on the D1 track for soccer. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I absolutely loved my experience. Well, I say that. I loved soccer.
Yeah.
I had a lot of brutal coaches. At the time, I didn't realize it was brutal. To me, that was normal. That's what's expected from a coach, the hard, ugly truth, the constant run more, do more, practice more. I averaged between 10 to 14 practices a week. I had 5 operations in a knee, and by the end, all my D1 offers disappeared because I tore 3 ligaments in my ankle with early onset arthritis, nerve damage, and cartilage damage. I didn't know who I was outside of soccer. I genuinely, my freshman year of college was the best year of my life because I was finding myself outside of the sport, which to this day, I love soccer. I'm not going to say I don't, because I do. I really appreciate you making a difference for those young girls out there pursuing the sports that they love, but doing it in a healthy way and knowing what is healthy. My question to you, and it's a little more personal because I'm still finding myself outside of this sport I committed so much time to, is how did you find yourself outside of your sport once you stop practicing it professionally and competitively?
Oh, well, thank you for being so candid about your experience. I definitely went through an identity crisis as well. I retired at the ripe old age of 23, 24 years old after the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney, Australia. And I really just came back for those Olympic Games to say thank you to the fans. They saved me in many ways that they will never, ever know. And after I had to hang up my leotard, I didn't know what to do. I was still doing motivational speaking. I had endorsements and things of that nature, but I didn't know what I was really passionate about or what I could be good at because I had dedicated my whole childhood to that one thing. What I needed to do at that time, and I'm not pushing this up on anyone, is to lean on my faith. And that's what I did. And I went into a place of complete silence because many times you'll hear, and I'm sure your dad is a loving dad.
He's awesome.
Yeah, I know. You got more than most of us. I will
And
say
Dad,
that.
my comment, thank you for supporting me through soccer as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Lean on those that know you and will guide you in the right direction. And for myself, what I did is I went to a place of complete silence. A lot of people are afraid of silence. They're afraid of what they are going to hear in those moments of silence or not hear. But I leaned on him and I allowed him to guide me. And it wasn't towards what the world wanted me to do. It wasn't looking for affirmation or applause again. One of my mentors was Janet Hill, who has now since passed away, Grant Hill's mom, and Calvin Hill. His dad wrote a book, When the Audience Stops, when the applause stops or something with regards to that, and I've never sought after the applause. And so just really allowing him to light my path and guide me. And so when everything came out about Larry Nassar and the evil and the vile things that that man did, it really did open my eyes to, I want to be a part of the positive change. And so when my husband and I made this commitment, this is something that we're very passionate about. And I don't think I would have ever been led to this if I wasn't in a place of silence and really allowing him to guide me.
Dominique, thank you very
you.
much. We've got some great leadership lessons that Dominique has left us with. Please make sure to get a photo of those. Dominique, I see your gold medal over here, by the way.
I can track it. I can track it.
His way around. Dominique has also agreed for a few minutes, if you would like to have a photo with Dominique, if you just line up over here to my right, and we'll have folks come up on the stage. Dominique, thank you again for your wonderful presentation and your service. Let's give her a hand, please.
Great job.
No meetings December 15th to January 1st. Notice our next meeting, January 8th, Raphael Bostic, the head of the Federal Reserve. January 22nd, we've got Paige Alexander, the head of the Carter Center, and Jason Carter. And January 29th, Jeff Immel, former CEO of General Electric. Thank you for joining us today.
Everybody.